You know that feeling when someone asks you to go out, to dinner, to a party, to something that should be simple, and instead of excitement, you feel this immediate wave of resistance, not quite anxiety, not quite dread, something quieter, something that whispers, "But I'm fine right here." You tell yourself it's preference, that you're just an introvert, that you genuinely enjoy your own company, your own space, the familiar geometry of your rooms. And that's true. It is true. But if you're being honest, and I mean truly honest, there's something else underneath it, isn't there? There's a part of you that feels safest when the door is locked, when the outside world is held at arm's length, when you can control every variable, every stimulus, every potential threat to your nervous system. Home isn't just where you live, it's where you hide. And here's the paradox that nobody talks about. The thing that saved you is now the thing that's slowly suffocating you. Your home, your sanctuary, your fortress, your carefully curated bubble of control, it was necessary once. Maybe you grew up in chaos. Maybe the world proved itself cruel early on. Maybe you learned that people are unpredictable, that vulnerability is dangerous, that the only person you can truly rely on is yourself in the space you've made safe. So you built walls. You created rituals. You made home into something more than a physical space. You made it into a psychological womb, a place where the world can't touch you, where you don't have to perform or explain or justify your existence. But now those walls are so high you can barely see over them. Now the safety has calcified into isolation. Now you're not just protecting yourself, you're imprisoning yourself. And the cruelest part? You're doing it all voluntarily. You're the architect of your own confinement. And every time you decline an invitation, every time you choose the known over the unknown, every time you tell yourself, "I'm just not a going out person," you're adding another brick. This is the psychology of people who love staying at home. Not the casual homebodies, not the people who simply prefer a quiet evening. This is about the ones for whom home has become both salvation and cage, for whom the outside world feels not just tiring, but threatening, for whom leaving the house requires the kind of emotional labor that others reserve for actual crisis. If that's you, if you've ever felt guilty for canceling plans you never wanted to make, if you've ever wondered why something so simple feels so hard, if you've ever looked at other people moving through the world with ease and wondered what's wrong with you, then you need to understand what's really happening. Because this isn't about preference. This is about protection. And it's time to examine what exactly you're still protecting yourself from. Let's talk about what's actually happening in your nervous system when you've become someone who loves staying home in this particular profound way. First, understand this. You are living in what psychologists call a state of hypervigilance, a chronic activation of your threat detection system. Your brain, specifically your amygdala, has been trained to perceive the external world as fundamentally unsafe. Not consciously, necessarily, but deep in the ancient survival-oriented parts of your brain, there's a program running that says outside equals risk. Home equals survival. This isn't paranoia. This is trauma-informed architecture. Your nervous system has taken data, real experiences of overwhelm, rejection, unpredictability, or danger, and constructed a perfectly logical response. Minimize exposure to threat by controlling your environment absolutely. Think of it like this. Imagine your nervous system as a fire alarm. In most people, it goes off when there's actual smoke. But in you, years of living in a burning building have made your alarm so sensitive that even the smell of a candle sends it screaming. The outside world, with its chaos, its demands, its social complexity, its uncontrollable variables, is that candle. And your nervous system is convinced it's a five-alarm fire. This brings us to the concept of the window of tolerance, a term from trauma psychology. Everyone has a range of stimulation, emotional, social, sensory, that they can handle while remaining regulated. Above that window is hyperarousal, anxiety, panic, overwhelm. Below it is hypoarousal, shutdown, dissociation, numbness. For people who love staying home in this pathological sense, that window has become vanishingly narrow. The baseline level of stimulation in the outside world, the noise, the crowds, the small talk, the eye contact, the performance of normalcy, it pushes you out of your window almost immediately. So you've learned to live entirely within the confines of what you can control. You've made your window fit your home instead of expanding your window to fit the world. And here's where it gets neurologically interesting. This isn't just psychological, this is structural. Your brain has literally rewired itself through a process called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural pathways based on repeated experience. Every time you choose home over the world, you're strengthening the neural pathway that says home equals safety, outside equals threat. You're training your brain to feel calm in isolation and distressed in connection. There's also the element of what psychologists call avoidant attachment, a relational style typically formed in childhood when caregivers were inconsistent, emotionally unavailable, or overwhelming. If you learned early that other people can't be trusted to meet your needs, you developed a strategy. Don't need people. Don't rely on them. Don't let them close enough to disappoint you. And home becomes the ultimate expression of that strategy. It's the place where you need no one, where you're completely self-sufficient, where relationships are optional, mediated by screens, kept at a safe distance. You've created a life where the very thing you fear most, abandonment, rejection, inadequacy, can't touch you because you've preemptively removed yourself from the equation. But here's what nobody tells you about avoidance. It doesn't make the longing go away. It just makes it hurt in a different way. There is a particular kind of grief that comes from choosing safety over living. And it's invisible. It doesn't announce itself with dramatic moments. It accumulates in the space between who you are and who you might have been. It's the grief of the invitation you declined, the friendship that faded because you were always too tired to show up, the experience you missed because it required leaving your comfort zone, the version of yourself that never got to exist because you were too busy protecting the version that does. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And for people who love staying home in this deep, protective way, acceptance would mean acknowledging what you've traded for safety. It would mean looking directly at the cost of your fortress. Because here's the truth you already know but can't quite face: you are living a half-life. Not because there's anything wrong with being home, but because you're not really choosing home, you're choosing not world.
You're not moving towards something you love, you're moving away from something you fear. And there is a profound difference between presence and absence, between sanctuary and hiding. The price you pay is authenticity. The price is spontaneity. The price is the electric, terrifying, beautiful vulnerability of being genuinely seen by another human being. The price is growth, which only happens at the edges of discomfort, in the places where you can't control the outcome. You've traded the possibility of rejection for the guarantee of loneliness. You've traded the risk of failure for the certainty of never trying. You've traded the chaos of connection for the sterile predictability of solitude. And the cruelest part? You've convinced yourself this is what you want. But your body knows differently. That's why there's that ache on Sunday evenings, not the dread of Monday, but the hollow echo of a weekend spent entirely alone. That's why you scroll through other people's lives on social media with that particular cocktail of envy and contempt. That's why you sometimes stand at your window watching the world move and feel like you're on the other side of glass from your own life. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard wrote about the concept of shut-upness, the state of being enclosed within oneself, cut off from true relation to both God and other humans. He believed it was a form of despair, a sickness unto death. Not physical death, but the death of the spirit that comes from refusing to be yourself in the presence of others. And that's what this is, isn't it? A kind of spiritual suffocation. You're so busy keeping yourself safe that you've forgotten what it feels like to be alive, to be surprised, to be challenged, to be known, truly known, in all your imperfect, messy, beautiful humanity. The fear that drives you home isn't the fear of danger. It's the fear of being seen and found inadequate. The fear of needing someone and being let down. The fear of trying and failing. The fear of being too much or not enough, but never just right. So you've eliminated the variable. You've chosen a life where you can't fail because you never try, where you can't be abandoned because you never attach, where you can't be rejected because you never show up. But you also can't win. You can't connect. You can't grow. And you can't ever truly rest, because deep down, you know you're not living. You're just existing, waiting. For what? You're not even sure anymore.
Let's talk about what this actually looks like in practice. Because the psychology of loving home isn't just a feeling, it's a pattern that infiltrates every aspect of your adult life. And if you're really paying attention, you'll recognize yourself in these behaviors, not as personality traits, as coping mechanisms. You might be someone who cancels plans at the last minute with elaborate excuses, not because you're flaky, but because the anxiety builds as the event approaches. What felt manageable 3 days ago feels impossible now. So you manufacture a crisis, a headache, car trouble, work emergency, anything to justify staying in the safety of home. And each time you do it, you feel both relief and shame in equal measure. You might be someone who structures your entire life to minimize human contact. Remote work isn't just a preference, it's a necessity. Online shopping, food delivery, digital communication. You've built a life where you technically never have to leave your home or interact face-to-face with anyone. And you tell yourself, this is efficiency. This is modern living. This is smart. But really, it's architecture of avoidance. You might be someone who turns down opportunities that require visibility, promotions that need public speaking, projects that require collaboration, social events where you'd meet new people. You don't actively sabotage yourself, you just quietly decline, citing burnout or bandwidth or alignment. And you watch others advance, form connections, take risks, while you stay exactly where you are, safe, stuck, the same. You might be someone who over-prepares for any departure from home. Leaving the house becomes an expedition requiring detailed planning. What will you wear? What might people ask? What could go wrong? You rehearse conversations. You map escape routes. You bring backup plans. Because nothing can be spontaneous when your nervous system treats everything as potential threat. You might be someone whose relationships exist primarily in your imagination. You have rich, complex relationships, friendships you'll nurture when you have more energy, romantic connections you'll pursue when you're in a better place, family bonds you'll repair eventually. But in reality, you're alone. Your relationships are theoretical. Existing in the future, you keep pushing away. You might be someone who feels a strange resentment toward people who seem comfortable in the world. Those people who make plans easily, who show up consistently, who navigate social situations without apparent effort. You tell yourself they're shallow, performative, fake. But really? You're jealous because they have access to a version of life you've locked yourself out of. You might be someone who experiences physical symptoms before social events. Genuine nausea, headaches, fatigue so profound you can barely get out of bed. This isn't manipulation. Your body has learned to create barriers when your mind can't justify staying home. Your nervous system is protecting you the only way it knows how. You might be someone who self-sabotages any momentum toward change. You'll plan to join a gym, then find reasons why each one isn't right. You'll commit to a class, then overwhelm yourself with preparation until you give up. You'll arrange a coffee date, then schedule it so far in advance it feels abstract. And when the time comes, you'll cancel, because some part of you knows if you actually try and it doesn't work, you'll have to face that the problem isn't the world, it's your relationship to it. Here's what you need to understand. These aren't character flaws. These are survival strategies that outlived their usefulness. You are not broken. You are not defective. You are not just introverted. So, what does healing look like when home has become both your sanctuary and your cage? It starts with something deeply uncomfortable. Expanding your window of tolerance. Not by forcing yourself into overwhelming situations, but through gradual, intentional exposure to the exact things your nervous system has learned to fear. This is called somatic experiencing, teaching your body, not just your mind, that the world is not as dangerous as it once was. This might look like sitting on your porch for 10 minutes a day, walking to the corner store instead of ordering delivery, saying yes to one small invitation per week, even if you leave early. The goal isn't to become extroverted. It's to give your nervous system new data. I can leave home and survive. I can be in the world and return safely. The threat I fear is not materializing. Then comes the deeper work. Inner child reparenting. Because the part of you that feels safest at home isn't your adult self. It's the child who learned that the world was too much. That child who felt overwhelmed, unseen, unsafe in spaces outside their control. Healing means going back to that child with the resources you have now and saying, I see you. I understand why you built these walls, but I'm here now, and I can protect us differently. This requires practicing what therapists call shadow work, turning toward the parts of yourself you've been avoiding, the loneliness you've been medicating with content consumption, the longing for connection you've reframed as weakness, the grief of the life unlived. You cannot heal what you refuse to feel. And here's the paradoxical truth. The path to genuine safety is through vulnerability, not avoidance. Real security doesn't come from eliminating all threat. It comes from knowing you can handle discomfort without collapsing. From building what psychologist Dan Siegel calls resilience, the capacity to move through difficulty and return to baseline. This means choosing softness over hardness, choosing to risk being seen, even imperfectly, choosing to show up even when it's uncomfortable, not because you must perform confidence you don't feel, but because you trust that your worth isn't contingent on controlling every variable. The writer Anais Nin captured it perfectly. And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. That's where you are now, isn't it? The pain of staying the same has finally outweighed the fear of change. The fortress that protected you has become the very thing you need liberation from. Healing doesn't mean you stop loving your home. It means you stop needing it as a buffer against life. It means home becomes a place you return to, not a place you hide in. A base, not a bunker. It means recognizing that you are not too damaged for connection. You are not too sensitive for the world. You are not fundamentally broken. You are someone who adapted brilliantly to impossible circumstances, and now those adaptations are no longer serving you. The goal was never to be fearless. It was never to be effortlessly social. It was never to stop needing safety. The goal is wholeness. The goal is integration. The goal is being able to move between solitude and connection, between home and world, without feeling like you're betraying yourself either way. The goal is to stop living in reaction to old wounds and start living in response to current reality. The goal is to uncage yourself, gently, with compassion, one choice at a time. Because you deserve more than the illusion of safety. You deserve the terrifying, beautiful, heartbreaking